President Yoon Suk Yeol addressed the U.S. Congress, saying the Seoul-Washington alliance serves as a compass for freedom in the world. And President Yoon receives a security briefing at the Pentagon and visits its key command and control center for the first time by a South Korean leader. The president also met with some big names in the U.S. entertainment industry, appealing for more collaboration with domestic content.
Good afternoon. We start on Capitol Hill, where President Yoon Suk Yeol addressed U.S. Congress as part of his state visit to the country. The president said the Seoul-Washington alliance that was forced to defend Korea's freedom will now look towards safeguarding freedom around the world, resulting in multiple standing ovations from the chamber. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Inspired by freedom, liberal democracy and human rights, South Korea and the United States will put their alliance in action as a compass for freedom in the world. That was the core of President Yoon Suk Yeol's speech to a joint session of the US Congress on Thursday. Reflecting on the past 70 years of bilateral security ties, Yoon described how South Korea, by joining hands with the US, had grown from the ashes of the Korean War to become the world's 10th largest economy, based on liberal democracy and a free market system.
For over 70 years in the history of the alliance, we worked together in military and security sectors. We also expanded our cooperation in the economic field. Our relationship has evolved from one of unilateral assistance to a partnership that is mutually beneficial.
He noted that Korean companies are now contributing to the US economy, producing EV batteries, semiconductors and cars, and creating thousands of well-paid jobs. Going forward, he said the two countries will lead in innovation beyond security and foreign policy to work on cutting-edge technologies, including chips, artificial intelligence, bioscience and quantum technology. But beyond economic relations, Yoon presented how the alliance would jointly tackle challenges to the freedom and rights of citizens around the world. He highlighted human rights abuses in North Korea, describing what he called unspeakable and horrendous incidents where men and women were killed for violating COVID-19 measures, publicly executed for watching South Korean shows, and being shot in public for their religious faith. Yoon also condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
It is an attempt to unilaterally changing the status quo with force. Korea strongly condemns the unprovoked armed attack against Ukraine.
Saying freedom and democracy are again under threat, Yoon said South Korea will rise to defend global citizens based on its own history of being invaded by North Korea and living up to its current economic capacity. He also thanked the members of Congress for unanimously adopting a resolution that welcomed his state visit. The document stressed the importance of the bilateral alliance for peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and across the Indo-Pacific region.
Receiving 23 standing ovations, President Yoon's speech marks the first time in 10 years that a South Korean leader has addressed the US Congress, the heart and soul of US democracy. Based on their shared universal values, he said the alliance will march towards the future for the freedom of humanity. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
As seen in the previous report, freedom took center stage in President Yoon's address, which marks the 7th of its kind by a South Korean leader. Our Lee Dae-yeon tells us more about the significance of Yoon's address.
President Yoon has become the third world leader to address a joint meeting of Congress since President Biden took office. In his nearly one-hour-long speech delivered in English, Yoon presented a blueprint of the South Korea-US alliance as a global tie to protect liberty and peace. The term freedom appeared 46 times in the speech, more than Yoon has ever previously used the word during his presidency. A number of historical figures were also mentioned, including those who had contributed to the bilateral alliance during the Korean War.
The late John Conyers Jr., Sam Johnson, and Howard Coble were veteran congressmen who promoted freedom and democracy. The former Representative Charles Rangel has been a strong supporter of the alliance. Korea will never forget the great American heroes who fought with us to defend freedom.
Names of Korean businesses and K-pop stars were also brought up. When mentioning Hyundai Motors' plant in the state of Georgia, Yoon smiled and pointed at members from that state as the two elected members from Georgia stood up and applauded. Many world leaders might like to be invited to give a speech in a joint meeting of Congress, but the process can be demanding. A bipartisan group of congressional leaders should agree on the address, while a diplomatic strategy should also be made to persuade Congress. Yoon's speech marks the 7th time a South Korean president has addressed a joint meeting of Congress, and the first time in 10 years since former President Park Geun-hye did so in 2013. Ri Seung-man, the first president of South Korea, also made a speech in a joint meeting of Congress, followed by Roh Tae-woo and Kim Young-sam. With the exception of former presidents Kim Young-sam and Lee Myung-bak, other former South Korean leaders made speeches in English. Yoon, at the end of his speech, mentioned Roh's speech from 34 years ago, saying that Roh's dream to make the Indo-Pacific more important to Washington, with Korea contributing to the prosperity of the region, has now become a reality. He added Seoul will strengthen the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific while taking a comprehensive approach to expanding cooperation with key partners. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
After addressing Congress, President Yoon attended a luncheon at the U.S. State Department where he vowed to further broaden the Seoul-Washington alliance moving forward. Our Choi Min-jung has this one.
Shortly after making an address to a joint session of Congress on Thursday, President Yoon was joined by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken for lunch at the State Department. There, President Yoon vowed to develop the Seoul-Washington alliance in a way that expands practical benefits for the people of both countries.
우리의 미래는 과거보다 더 찬란할 것입니다. 우리 양국은 강력한 힘에 의한 평화를 구축하고 동아시아와 세계의 평화를 촉진하는 자유의 연대를 이끌어갈 것입니다.
Yoon said this would be done by further strengthening solidarity and cooperation in cutting-edge technologies, including semiconductors, quantum artificial intelligence, space, and cyber technology. He added that young talents of the two nations will learn from one another and build a free, peaceful, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris touted South Korea-U.S. relations as she thanked Yoon's leadership for enabling further progress for the two nations in areas across security, economy, and culture.
I believe our nations and our people are increasingly bound together in a shared future and a common destiny. We are more interconnected and interdependent than we have ever been. And that, I believe, is to the benefit of all of humanity.
And State Secretary Antony Blinken made a remark in Korean, saying the two countries go together.
It has been 70 years since the United States and the Republic of Korea formed our alliance, making official a bond that was forged by Korean and American soldiers in the crucible of war. Kachi kapshita, we go together.
President Yoon said South Korea was able to rise from the ashes of war to become a country with global stature thanks to the U.S., and stated that the U.S. alliance has developed into the most successful alliance in history over the past 70 years. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Also during his visit, President Yoon received a security briefing at the U.S. Pentagon. There, the president also visited the key command and control center, a first for a South Korean president. This just a day after the adoption of Washington Declaration, which ranks out Washington's defense commitments against North Korea. Shin Ha-young reports.
During his trip to Washington, South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol also paid a visit to the Pentagon, where he received a briefing. The visit to the headquarters of national security and the U.S. Armed Forces is being viewed as a move to underscore South Korea-U.S. combined defense readiness, coming a day after Yoon and Biden announced the Washington Declaration aimed at bolstering extended deterrence against North Korea's evolving threats. Yoon met with the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and was given a briefing on the U.S. surveillance and crisis response system at the Pentagon's National Military Command Center, marking the first time that a South Korean president has visited the center. South Korea's first deputy director of the National Security Office, who is traveling with the president, described it as a key command and control center that directly assists the U.S. president and military commanders in times of emergency. During the talks, President Yoon reiterated the importance of the Washington Declaration, saying that he completely trusts U.S. pledges on extended deterrence.
저는 미국의 확고한 확장 억제 공약을 전적으로 신뢰합니다. 만일 북한이 핵무기 사용을 기도한다면 미국의 핵 능력을 포함해 한미 동맹과 대한민국 국군의 결연하고 압도적 대응에 직면하게 될 것입니다.
Secretary Austin pinpointed the ongoing challenges from North Korea, including the regime's missile testing program, adding that the determination of the U.S. to defend South Korea is strong.
The U.S. commitment to the defense of the ROK is ironclad, and so is our extended deterrence commitment to your country, which includes the full range of U.S. defense capabilities, including conventional, nuclear, and missile defense capabilities.
Meanwhile, Yoon also became the first foreign president to visit the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which develops innovative technologies for combat and national security. There, he discussed how such a research environment can lead to technological innovations and measures to bolster bilateral cooperation on defense science and technology. 신하영, Arirang News.
In the meantime, China has reportedly lodged an official complaint against Yoon and Biden's joint statement that stressed the importance of maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. According to the Beijing Daily on Friday, China's foreign ministers summoned an official from South Korean embassy on Thursday and expressed deep regret over, quote, China-related misinterpretations. The ministry stressed China's stern stance on Taiwan and urged South Korea to firmly adhere to the One China policy. In a joint statement issued after Yoon and Biden's summit on Wednesday, the leaders reiterated the importance of preserving peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and strongly opposed any unilateral attempts to change the status quo in the Indo-Pacific region. Wrapping up his itinerary in Washington, D.C., President Yoon is now on his way to Boston. The president will visit the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, home to a world-class bio cluster. There he would hold talks with leading scholars in the digital and bio sectors. Also, President Yoon would hold roundtable with experts and business people working in innovation clusters and host a panel session at Harvard University's Kennedy School on economic freedom and liberal democracy. Before leaving for Boston, President Yoon Suk Yeol once more put the salesman hat on, appealing to the U.S. entertainment industry for more active collaboration with domestic content. Our Kim Do-young reports.
President Yoon Suk Yeol wrapped up his Washington, D.C. visit by showing his support for South Korea's media and content industry as he appealed for bigger exchanges between Korean and the U.S. motion picture companies. On Thursday, he attributed the alliance of South Korea and the U.S. for the current success of K-content.
금년이 이제 한미 동맹 70주년이고 저는 다른 무엇보다도 정말 이 젊은 사람들의 이 희생과 헌신에 터잡아서 만들어진 한미 동맹이 70년간 발전해 오면서 우리 대한민국도 정말 전쟁의 폐허에서 세계적인 이제 경제 문화 강국이 됐습니다.
Speaking at a global video content leadership forum, the president addressed representatives from American media powerhouses like Paramount, Warner Brothers, Discovery, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures, the Walt Disney Company, and Netflix. On the Korean side, entertainment companies like CJ, SLL, and Watcha were in attendance. The event was organized by the U.S. Motion Picture Association, a rare move by the industry to come together for a leader of another country. The presidential office explains that to have big-name industry players come together is not common, and it shows the strength South Korean content has in the industry.
And sir, I wanted to say that as I travel around the world in my current job and in my former job as Assistant Secretary, it's repeated again and again how many countries want to be like Korea, to emulate the success of K content and create their own industry modeled on Korea's success.
President Yoon promised full support for collaboration, saying that he will make sure K content meets the global standard when it comes to running entertainment industries.
저는 이 문화 산업, 이 문화 영역에는 국가 간에 국경이 없다고 생각합니다. 뭐 다른 요새 모든 경제 이런 통상 분야가 다 마찬가지지만 특히 문화는 국가가 경계를 해 놓으면은 안 되는 거라고 저는 생각합니다.
South Korea's Minister of Culture Park Bo-gyun was part of the delegation on this trip and was involved in arranging the forum. It's the first time that a culture minister has joined a South Korean president on a trip to the U.S. And with the support of the ministry, the Korea Creative Content Agency and the Korea Film Council together signed an MOU with Netflix to foster more talent in the production industry among young Koreans while expanding Korean content globally. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
On the sidelines of President Yoon's state visit, Seoul's Culture Ministry on Friday signed an MOU with U.S. Smithsonian Institution to boost cultural exchanges. It marks the first official MOU signing between the organizations, although official exchanges started in 1961 when the American National Museum of Natural History exhibited a statue of Buddha from the Goryeo period. Further collaboration is now expected in the fields of culture and history. Artwork donated by late Samsung Chairman Lee Gun-hee is scheduled to go on display at the National Museum of Asian Art in Washington, D.C. in 2025. Boosting cultural exchanges has been a big part of President Yoon's state visit, with its very first outcome being a major investment by Netflix into Korean productions. What is behind the rising interest of the U.S. market in Korean movies and series? Our Kim Hyun-sing takes a look.
With home-produced music, movies, and series dubbed the Korean Wave, now swelling to be more of a tidal wave, Korean productions were one of the centerpieces of this whole Washington summit. They are bringing home the big bucks, making $1.7 billion in revenue last year, an almost 50% jump from the year before. Netflix has doubled down by announcing a $2.5 billion investment in South Korean productions after meeting with President Yoon on his U.S. trip. Then what's behind this recent success? Experts say that it comes from giving common themes a uniquely South Korean flavor. The movie Parasite and Netflix series Squid Game pointed out poverty and the divide in class, a relatable theme to all. But within the overarching theme was a Korean flavor, for example, the panjiha, a South Korean semi-basement home, or japaguri, the popular Korean instant noodle recipe in the movie Parasite. This gives Korean productions that extra punch. Some also say that ironically, it's the low production cost that propelled Korean productions into success. Squid Game, for example, despite being one of the most popular shows on Netflix, cost about $2.4 million per episode. Pennies compared to other hit shows, like Stranger Things and The Crown, which cost at least $8 million. From a conference at Stanford University earlier this month, Professor Daphna Zur said that it's that hungry mindset that set Korean stories apart. With the opportunity cost fairly low, Korean productions have more room to accept new ideas and new challenges, making them a one-of-a-kind in the worldwide production scene. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
The latest data shows the U.S. GDP grew at the sluggish pace of 1.1% in the first quarter amid high interest rates. Despite signs of a slowdown, President Joe Biden insists the American economy remains strong. Lee Seung-jae with more.
According to preliminary data released by the U.S. Commerce Department on Thursday, U.S. GDP grew at a 1.1% annualized pace in the first quarter of this year. The latest figure is well below the 2% estimate, showing a clear sign that the U.S. economy is slowing. The slowdown is all the more noticeable as GDP in the U.S. grew 2.6% in the first quarter of last year. The report cited a decline in private inventory investment and a slowdown in non-residential fixed investment. Experts, however, believe the U.S. Fed's aggressive rate hikes to battle inflation are beginning to take effect, adding that such figures could lead to the U.S. Central Bank to halt its rate hikes for the time being. Despite Thursday's grim data, U.S. President Joe Biden touted the latest GDP report, stating that the figures prove that the American economy remains strong as it transitions to steady and stable growth. Biden said that in the first quarter of this year, real personal disposable income increased and American consumers continued to spend, even as the overall pace of growth moderated. He added that the U.S. added more than 300,000 jobs per month during the quarter, while the unemployment rate remained near a 50-year low. As Biden announced his re-election bid earlier this week, the economy and inflation remain his biggest domestic vulnerability. American voters have pointed to inflation as their top domestic issue, while economists have predicted that the economy will shrink further throughout the remainder of 2023. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Turning over to the domestic economy, South Korea's overall industrial production in March saw the biggest on-month rise in a year. Data released by Statistics Korea shows that last month's industrial production increased 1.6% compared to the previous month on the back of strong performances by the manufacturing and mining sectors. Chip production in particular rose over 35%, marking the biggest jump in more than 14 years. But Statistics Korea says this is due to temporary factors, such as the base effect stemming from a recent drop in chip demand. Retail sales were also up 0.4%, with the figure seeing an on-month rise for the second month in a row. However, facility investments were down 2.2%. South Korea will upgrade the way it labels cultural assets. With the passing of the National Heritage Framework Act on Thursday, cultural heritage will now be called national heritage, and it will be divided into three subcategories: cultural heritage, natural heritage, and intangible heritage. The changes will come into effect by May 2024. The act also includes the designation of December 9th as National Heritage Day. That's the date that a number of Korean cultural sites such as Bulguksa Temple and Jongmyo Shrine were registered as UNESCO World Heritage Sites back in 1995.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We begin with the world's oceans, where temperatures over the past few weeks have reached record highs. According to climate scientists, preliminary data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration shows that the ocean's average surface temperature reached 21.1 degrees Celsius at the start of April, rising a relatively large 0.36 degrees from March. The new figure beats its previous high of 21 degrees set in April 2016. The changes have been linked to warm weather on the back of the El Niño, combined with global warming. The increased temperatures come after a 3-year cooling period from the La Niña. Scientists are still determining what the warmer oceans could mean for atmospheric temperatures. but they do predict an increase in extreme weather conditions. Moving on to the Gulf of Oman, where the United States Navy says that on Thursday, Iran seized a U.S.-bound oil tanker. The Suez tanker, a Marshall Islands-flagged vessel, was contracted by Chevron to deliver oil to Texas from Kuwait, where it was last docked. The ship has a crew of 24 members, all of whom are Indian. Iranian state media, meanwhile, has reported that a ship was seized after it collided with an Iranian vessel on Wednesday evening. It did not identify the seized ship. The U.S. Navy says that this is at least the fifth vessel taken by Iran in just 2 years. And finally, legendary talk show host Jerry Springer has died, aged 79. According to his family, he passed away on Thursday after a brief illness. Springer was most famous for headlining The Jerry Springer Show. It was a provocative American talk show that often saw invited guests argue and fight over domestic disputes. The show ran 27 years and broadcast nearly 5,000 episodes. Before his broadcasting career, Spring was the mayor of Cincinnati and also a political reporter. He was born during World War II in 1944 in a London underground station that was being used as a bomb shelter. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We could wear a lighter jacket this morning with daily lows kicking off about 1 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Then highs are rising fast, leading to big gaps in readings between lows and highs in most parts of the country. Daily highs are a couple of degrees higher than norms this afternoon with good air quality nationwide. We had sunny skies to start out the day, then southern regions are noticing skies turning cloudy with rain in the forecast from Jeju Island tonight. That rain will spread nationwide overnight before letting up from tomorrow afternoon. Jeju and Gyeongsang-Namdo province could see up to 40 millimeters of rainfall. Now, it could be a 3-day weekend for some, with Monday marking Labor Day here in Korea. Other than on Saturday, the weather will be calm and promising through Monday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend.